Hello, everyone. I am Ben Johnson, and this is the Perpetual Chess Podcast. Perpetual Chess is a weekly chess interview show where we talk with accomplished chess players, authors, and personalities about their lives, their careers, and how to improve at chess. Perpetual Chess is brought to you through the generosity of its Patreon and PayPal supporters and by Chessable.com. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Perpetual Chess. We are back with another Adult Improver edition. For those who haven't heard these before, these are primarily focused on how someone got better at chess, and usually it's someone with great distinction in that area. And in this case, I think we have one of the best adult improvers in history. He is the only person I know of who played his first tournament as an adult and made it to FIDE Master. I can't even think of anyone who made it to USCF Master, for that matter. Now, I do feel like there are probably one or two other examples. So listeners, if you can think of them, please do send them to me. But in any event, it's an amazing achievement. Started chess at the age of 23 in earnest, played his first tournament at 24, earned the USCF Master title at 31, the FM title at 40, made his highest rating of 2318 at the age of 53. And at the age of 57, he became the U.S. senior co-champion. So sprinkles these chess achievements throughout his life. I believe he is 60 as he is joining us. And in case you're thinking our guest only does chess, you're mistaken. He's a father of twins and an adult improver in music as well. He's a classically trained guitarist and later in life became a professional opera singer who has performed at Carnegie Hall as well as all over the world. He's taken years off from chess at times, but is still plugging away. And in fact, recently played at the Southwest Open, yes, during COVID, and beat a 2500 IM in that tournament, by the way. So lots to discuss. And, you know, this story is still unfolding. Nathan's love for chess still burns strong. But without further ado, let's welcome him. FM Nathan Resica, thank you for joining Perpetual Chess.
So glad to be here, Mr. Johnson. And I should correct one thing. It was the tie for first in the U.S. Senior Championship at age 52 in 2013. The Carnegie Hall debut was at 57.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Sorry for getting that backward. Yeah, I'm always, often if it's not spelled out, I'm just kind of guessing because I don't know when people's birthday is, but I know the year they were born. But in any event.
I was runner-up in 2018. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, go on.
But amazing in any event. And you also played in a world senior and had a good result in recent years as well. Is that correct, Nathan?
Yes, 2018, one of the greatest experiences and probably the funnest tournament I ever played. So many legends were there. It was in Bled, Yugoslavia, where the cab driver who picked us up had 7 IM norms, but was too lazy to apply for the title. That's the kind of people are in Bled. But that was just, yeah.
Classic Yugoslavia. I know you lived there for a bit, so maybe you can.
I lived in Hungary.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe you can, excuse me, so you can tell us more about that in due time. But yeah, just so many incredible accomplishments. And of course, as we speak, we're amidst a burgeoning chess boom fueled by people being stuck on their computers and now the Queen's Gambit. So I'm guessing there are a lot of listeners who are starting as adults and would like to make it to master. So, and you did it in the analog age, no less. So Nathan, let's hear all your secrets. Let's just dive right in.
All right. You have any specific questions to start me?
Well, let's start chronologically. So I did for the second recent interview, I was able to listen to something from from our mutual friend Fred Wilson's archive and hear that you started in playing Blitz in Harvard Square as a 23-year-old. Is that right?
Yes. In Cambridge, Mass. And it was a very, very lively chess scene, a little like Washington Square, only more antiseptic and not as much cursing, trash talk, and intimidation. But a lot of, at that point, I just saw the speed clock, and actually, I think I played a guy there who was a master, and he let me win a game. He must have. And I didn't bite and keep playing him because he probably wanted me to keep playing. And I just left. I said, wow, I beat this guy. But I knew I had a lot to learn, but it inspired me to buy a book like Logical Chess Move by Move by Irving Chernev.
Yeah, like classic.
Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess. And yeah, I just started gravitating toward that. I mean, speed chess, in my opinion, gave me a lot of bad habits, but it was a lot of fun. And yeah.
And how good were you? I mean, I'm sure you weren't amazing, but like, what was your starting level? It's just having learned the game and started to play Blitz in the park.
Let's see. I mean, I probably was. Let's see. I just was probably about 20. No, sorry, it's more like probably 1400 or less. I don't know. Must be less. And I just
were you like hanging all your pieces or not really?
It depends who I played. But it depends. When I started looking at books a little, I did better. But it's only speed chess, so the clock was always part of it.
Right.
But finally, at 24, I played a real tournament, and after playing Blitz for like a year and a half, I won the tournament, the under 1400 section, 4-0, the Pillsbury Memorial. And they wrote about me in the magazine, so that was kind of nice. And it was like, wow, I can be good at this. But I really enjoyed, listening to some music on the headphone and some Bach or something, and just the beautiful intricacy of the chessboard. And of course, what really inspired me was at the beginning, I got Lasker's Manual of Chess. And I don't know if you remember what inspired you at the beginning, but when you saw the smothered mate.
Yeah.
The queen G1 check, rook takes, knight F2 mate. It's just, that sort of inspires you. Wow, how can you, win a game like this when everyone wants to play knight takes rook after you lose your queen?
Right.
Yeah. You play checkmate. So that type of stuff inspired me, and I always wanted to surprise your opponent with some move they didn't expect, and it was the crux of my first tournament. And of course, in my second tournament, I had a first rating of 1711. I was kind of full of myself. And I remember playing in the under 1600 section and thinking, I keep moving up. And I ended up in a position where I had a bishop, but my opponent had 4 passed pawns, each isolated, one on the H file, one on the F file, one on the D file, one on the A file. And I thought I was winning. But somehow my bishop couldn't stop all the pawns. Anyway, that's the first story.
That's funny. Well, there's a few interesting things from that. Number one to me is I have to say that's impressive to be at 1700 so quickly. These days, GM Eugene Perelstein, speaking of New England area residents, had tweeted just either today or yesterday that he just took on a new student who has never played a tournament and is rated 1900. And of course, he was just sort of exclaiming that never used to happen. That was a thing that didn't exist pre-internet age. And he said that this person has just taught himself by playing online, not reading books, and just using the self-teaching algorithm to review his games from chess.com. But that's in the new age. In the old age, it's very rare for someone to have a first rating of even 1400, let alone being rated 1700 within a year. So I see, listeners, I can see Nathan as we're talking, and I see the glint in his eye as he remembers this stuff. So you loved it right away. How much time were you spending reading? Like what was your schedule like to pursue this new passion?
Well, let me add that, of course, you have to have 20 or 25 games to have a real rating. So your rating bounces around as a provisional rating. So in other words, if you beat a 1400 in your first game, your rating is 1800. But if you lose to a 1400, your rating is 1000, right? So after my second tournament, it dropped. And then I settled in around 1585 after, 22 games.
Okay, that's still very rarefied air for a brand new analog player, though.
Well, okay, I did have that experience finally getting to play some stronger players at speed chess, and but yeah, now it seems there's so many tools that give you good ways to learn strategies and everything. Let me remind you, back then, right? You had Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess, right? And that was, remember that book?
Yeah, one of the best selling of all time.
Right, and it's designed for maybe an 800 player, because it shows you how to checkmate on the back rank, and it shows you all this basic stuff. But the funny thing is, the next book Bobby wrote was my 60
right,
game.
yeah.
And when you try to read my 60 Memorable Games, in my opinion, that book is written for people above 2,200 because it goes through the opening with not a mention of strategy. And it gets to a note, and he says, and white has a winning attack, and there's no attack even started yet.
Right.
So you have to have, like, I just bought finally the new issue of it in algebraic. And now I'm reading it, and I can almost read it without a set. And like, that's what I love. You work on your game enough, and you can read chess books without a set. And that's sort of your goal. Because yeah?
Well, I think, so Nathan has written an article about his experiences on for uschess.com or .org, excuse me, which I'll link to. And I believe it was in that, although it might have been somewhere else, where you mentioned, and you're not the first person to mention this, but the importance of just training yourself to read without a set. So when did you start doing that?
Yeah, I believe Gelfand mentioned that, and Petrosian said that. And you really, my father's an artist, right? He's a successful painter. He's 92. And he always told me when he was studying his craft, which he's wanted to do since he was 11. So that's why he made it in painting, because he's been single-minded, sort of like, in my opinion, he's a Bobby Fischer of painting, because he's trained classically. He knew what he wanted to do since he was 11. And his new book came out, 8 Decades of Painting.
Wow.
And he just studied with classics. He said he used to go to the Metropolitan Museum, right? And he would go in front of a Rembrandt or a Corot or a Renoir, and he would study and copy the master. And that's the way I look at chess. Really understanding one game of a great master is better than playing 100 of your own tournament games. So that's his philosophy, and that's sort of what rubbed off on me. Like, you humble yourself, but you don't just want to go through the game. You have to go through it thinking, what would you do on every move? That's why there was a book also, what was it called? Daniel King has a column in British magazine called Chess. How good is your chess? And you cover the paper and you think what you would do on every move. Right.
Yeah. And these days, I mean, Pandolfini, of course, had a solitaire chess. I don't think it's still going in Chess Life magazine, similar feature. And now ChessBase has this replay training where you can guess the move every move and the algorithm tells you. So yeah, certainly a good way to train. And when you were studying these classics, Nathan, how much time would you spend on a typical game?
Okay, well, I had to find, like you say, books with more prose in them, because so many of these books just had the moves, and then they'd say occasional comment, and white is better, right? Or this and white. And you don't, why? Because I'm sure people will find themselves asking themselves that, like, why is white better? And so you have to develop that instinct. And so your question was, about books without a set. Well, that comes after a while. At first, of course, everybody needs more diagrams in the book.
Yeah. Well,
right?
How much time per game, though?
That's a good question. Well, let's say, I guess you could say, if someone turned me on to the Encyclopedia of Chess Middle Games, and that's like little combinations. And one is of deflection, to pull a piece away, removing the guard. And I would take a bus ride and I would look at those and I would try to solve them if I was on the way somewhere. I do a Xerox of a page. I'd have it with me.
Nice. Yeah. This is like the prehistoric tactics trainer.
Yeah. It's sort of an obsession, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so how much time per game? It's hard to remember. The quicker I went over, the less I got out of it.
Right. And it sounds like for you, it wasn't like you're not trying to check a box that says you did it. You're immersed in it. So, I mean, it sounds like you might spend 90 minutes looking at a game just because you were trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Is that fair?
Could be. And it's like frustrating because you have a book, and how are you going to get through the book if it takes you a day to get through a page?
Right.
But that's the way chess is. It's an amazing learning tool. Or there was that movie where the IM said, chess is a form of intelligence. Well, I don't know. Is it a religion? Is it a form of intelligence?
Right.
Whatever. Chess is chess. It's sort of like opera, and it's sort of like boxing a little bit, a metaphor.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah, it's a unique blend of art and competition. Okay, so I'm going to dare say that you probably had some talent for the game, given your early, relatively high rating, and you also had the other prerequisite, which is an obsession. So over the course of the 7 years that it took you to make USCF Master, and now I know you've taken some breaks in subsequent years, which we'll get to, but like how many hours a week do you think you were spending on chess between the time you're playing in the park and the books you're reading back in those days?
Okay. Now I remember. Okay, you asked me what I was doing. Yeah, I was playing classical guitar, studying it, and had a lot of different jobs. I ended up dropping out of school. So not quite a chess bum. I was a music and chess bum, but I worked as a waiter. I painted houses. I was an award-winning census taker, but that was just in 1990. That job pops up along every 10 years.
Well, congratulations on that award.
Oh, yeah. Everyone let me into their house.
Huh.
Crazy. Would you let me into your house? It was weird. More people let me into their house than anyone else. It was weird. But so how much time? It's interesting. It's true. Okay, some other books that got me into it as I started getting better. I had teachers. My first teacher, I decided I'd humble myself and get a teacher. So it was Murray Turnbull. Did you ever hear of him?
Only from your interview with Fred Wilson, I have to admit.
He was the Harvard Square master, an eccentric guy who actually was $23.99 US. And he wore a straw hat, and he sat in Harvard Square and played people for money, play the chess master. And he was from a very intellectual family. His parents were both professors, but he gave it all up. He was like totally chess. And so he taught me the finer points. And then I ended up trying Alexander Ivanov. But let me tell you another thing that helped for me. Harvard Square had the Harvard Science Center at the Harvard on the campus. And they had blitz tournaments featuring another person you interviewed, Chris Chabris.
Oh, yeah, a friend of mine.
We go way back.
On a few times, yeah.
Yeah, we go way back. And Danny Edelman, David Gluick, these are Jerome Bono. These are all 2,400 players. And they would play there. And I would get to rumble with these guys, even though I'd lose without having a clue what was going on sometimes. And so it was a very strong blitz tournaments, and they had their own little rating system, and it was once a week. And Murray would play, the guy I studied with. And then all of a sudden, the immigrant came from the Soviet Union, Alexander Ivanov, right? And I'll never forget my first game. He's playing some sort of Joko piano on black, and the bishop's on one side of the board on C4, and he plays this move, bishop back to D1. And I couldn't do anything about the bishop coming out on the other side and mating me. It was like, you never expect to see a move like that. Anyway, he ripped people apart, and he would win every event. And then we knew the Russian invasion.
Yeah.
And so those tournaments really helped for me. And I gradually built my rating up to a 2,200 blitz rating by playing in that. And also I had some friends. International Master Joe Fang, who was a many-time New Hampshire champion, his best friend and my friend David Vigorito, who you also interviewed. And I got to watch what made these guys tick. I mean, they all played as juniors. William Pascal, too. Mm-hmm. I am Bill Pascal. And we would play long sessions, and they called me a lab rat, LR. Lab rat, because I never really cared as much about opening theory as mating my opponent. So I was sort of like a crude boxer throwing punches, and they really learned they knew their structures and strategies a lot better. And so now I've come around to understand what they were doing, but it took me a long time. But not that I didn't. I mean, the first time I played Joe in a tournament, the second time I beat him. So that sort of welcomed me into the fold. Then he beat me most of the times. And so playing these guys, and watching what they did. Like Dave always had an incredible photographic memory, but he mentioned in your interview pawn structure chess, and he really understood the interplay of the pawn structure and how it related to the strategy in the opening to middle game.
This is the Soltis one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was brought up on that at a young age, and I didn't have anything like that. I was just Paul Morphy, try to mate you. And he always seemed to understand what was going on in the positions. And I think that really helped him get and keep an edge. But of course, he's a great player too, in general. But I'm just thinking about what I notice as the years go by now.
So were you doing, I mean, it sounds like it was a bit of a chess hotbed. A lot of people working hard. A lot of people, by the way, who of course I remember, and I grew up in Philly. And then of course we played once or twice in New York. But I remember them coming for the National Chess Congress and the World Open and all those tournaments, and played a few of them along the way. But so were you guys doing a lot of postmortems, like a lot of like sitting around and analyzing games together, or was it more like the study was on your own and then you came and combated and then you like went back to your bunker and studied?
You're right. Sometimes we'd go through Joe would go through the games of Rubinstein or Petrosian, and we just look at a lot of games. But I think they did more opening stuff. I would just come be a blitz partner. But I worked on my game enough, and I remember what I did, like my formation. There were certain books that were really good. And I will mention the best books that helped me. One was called Secrets of Grandmaster Play by John Nunn. And everyone probably knows who John Nunn is.
Yeah, his books get recommended a lot, of course.
Back then in the 90s, he was the guy who wrote books on how to attack, how to play E4, and really explaining the strategies. And so I found that helped a lot. And I remember going in the Cape Cod hills when I visited my parents in Cape Cod and just being alone in a hill with a chess set in that book and like outside trying to study and understand how John Nunn would win his games. So that book explained a lot about prose, a lot of understanding your moves. So that was the original edition by Peter Griffiths and John Nunn. And you can still find it on Amazon. Secrets of Grandmaster Play, not Secrets of Grandmaster Chess. It's used now.
Okay.
But it was very cheap.
So, Nathan, you mentioned that you got a coach very early on, and you also mentioned that you were sort of a chess bum. So I wonder, because I think a lot of people may find it hard to pull the trigger on the expense of a coach. And I think it might have been even harder back then when you couldn't just hire people online, maybe for a cheaper rate from abroad and do it via Skype and stuff like that. So was this a hard decision for you to get a coach?
Well, no, because I knew I wanted to keep improving. And I know whenever you do music or everything, you humble yourself before it and you realize that you got to put a certain amount. It's like classical art takes time and discipline. And so, yeah, I was saying that. It was Ivanov for a little while, but he was a little expensive. So I wanted to find the best deal and also get. So what happened is, let me tell you a bit about how I worked on a repertoire that got me to master.
Actually, if you don't mind, I do want to hear about that, but we have a couple opening questions.
Yeah. Sure.
Because you wrote in your US Chess article, which I linked to for Patreon subscribers, about sort of your approach to openings. So maybe we can use that as a springboard to discuss your opening journey. But actually, Nathan, before I do that, let's take a break and hear from our friends at Chessable, and then we're going to dive into these questions about your opening repertoire. Listeners, as you will hear in this interview, FM Nathan Resica still somehow hasn't checked out Chessable. Nathan, what are you waiting for? Chessable.com, of course, has
tons and tons of courses on whatever opening you're looking to learn, or middle game concepts, end games, and on it goes. In this episode, we talk about opening repertoires a lot. Nathan has had a lot of success with the modern defense. Vyacheslav Nemec, friend of the show, has a great course on the modern defense against everything. It includes model games so that you can see typical structures. And of course, our other friends of the show, I Am Chess Explained and FM Karsten Hansen, are out with a new lifetime repertoire course on 1 C4 and 1 Knight F3, openings that Nathan also has had success with as he continues to build out his repertoire. So remember that all of these things have the Move Trainer technology, and Chessable also has free courses you can check out. So go have a look, and let's get back to the interview.
Okay, so the first question is from new Patreon subscriber Arjun Duvapov. Thank you for the support, Arjun. And Arjun asks, so he listened to the recent interview with Peter Giannatos, FM Peter Giannatos, and this is what he says. He says, is there an ideal adult improver opening repertoire? FM Peter Giannatos mentioned recently that as we get older, we cannot rely on tactical ability as much as the youngster, and it makes much more sense to study strategic concepts to improve. Does this have an influence on opening choices? Should the 30-plus-year-old club player with a job and a family go for more strategic openings? If so, do you have any suggestions? I understand openings don't matter a ton, but are there optimal choices to make?
Very good question, and very, very common question, right? Here's the thing that one of my teachers always told me. You can play these strategic, slow things, whatever. You can try these, but eventually that game's going to crack open at some point. There's going to be a tactical something to win. And I don't think there's any way around learning tactics. But let me tell you what I did that helped me improve. And a lot of the improvement happened, I guess it did happen in my late 20s, but I did start in my 20s. But I don't know if I would have gotten where I am with the strategic if I didn't have this founding. Like the basis. And I chose an opening that was a little offbeat. In other words, it was good, but it wasn't played much. So you don't want to play something that's unsound and bad. But I think it's a good idea to play things tactical to get started. And I'm going to get to the answer to that, but I can say that I was black, and I always played E5. They played E4, right? And I played E5, right? And it got to be a Ruy Lopez, Knight F3, Knight C6, right? Bishop B5. And there was a senior master who kept beating me at blitz after A6, Bishop takes C6, right? The exchange variation. So I didn't allow it. I didn't play A6. I played the Berlin. By the way, everyone's playing it now. It's
right.
Not offbeat. But there was a key. After Knight F6, right, white castles, and my move was Bishop C5, the Berlin Classical. And that move order, I just learned it inside out because it develops your pieces quickly. You're getting your pieces out. You're getting ready for a skirmish. And you get a slight development edge over white in a lot of lines, and you learn how to rumble in those positions. And that's how I got to master by beating a reigning world junior champion, Ilya Gurevich. That made me master when I won a 6-hour game against him with black in that line.
Wow.
After beating every 2,400 player in New England in that line. And it's like, so I really, if you want to choose something, choose one thing, learn it well. Just learn to love that position. Look at that opening position, learn to love it, meaning you really want to know it. And, but the whole thing is, okay, so that got me to master, right? And that's what I did. And of course, you have to learn to deal with the Scotch game. You have to learn to deal with other choices, the King's Gambit. And my option was the Falkbeer counter gambit to get my own play going. And I learned those lines really well. even and I even against the two knights, I sometimes played with success the Traxler or the Wilkes-Barre variation. In other words, since after they play knight g5 in the Italian, the two knights, you play bishop c5. You let them take your f pawn, and you're getting all this activity. So I don't know if it's true that you're going to lose tactically to a youngster. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. But so I'm telling you what worked for me, but this was my basis. Now he's asking me what openings I would choose as an older person. Well, it did change, but it's true. I took 7 years off cold turkey. And why? Because part of me was saying, I don't know if anyone had a love-hate relationship with chess.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, I wanted to make my mark, and I was a musician, and, you know, and I just said, I can't just play chess. I have to do something and be really good besides chess. And so, and besides, I really, you know, I always was a musician, and I always doing that half. So I always had half my life. So I did teach chess always during this, but I did a lot, but I left the game for 7 complete years, and I didn't even look at a chessboard really.
Well, Nathan, if I may, can we come back to that?
Yeah.
Okay. I do want to hear about it because the love-hate relationship is something we can all relate to. I took some time away from chess myself. But so to distill what you're saying in the opening, because a lot of what you're describing is like the analog days of home cooking, you know, where you found some amazing lines, which, by the way, the engine, it sounds like for the most part would approve of what you cooked up for your opponents. But these days, that's not how people need to prepare. These days, you just flip on the engine and find something you like. So I think similar to what I was saying in an interview that Nathan, you won't have heard yet because it just came out this morning. But with Frank Brady, where he was saying the chess advice that Bobby Fischer gave him was to read MCO, Modern Chess Openings, this giant opening encyclopedia, and then read it again. And to me, that's not great chess advice, but it shows an obsession, which is the key. And what you're describing to me, like, as you say, being in the lab, you know, cooking up your own lines, like tailoring things for your frequent opponents, like that shows an attention to detail that I think is the main thing for an opening in terms of the necessity of going deep. You look like you have something to interject.
Yeah, it's not what I was saying. I didn't really cook up stuff. Like I said, I chose a line that when Andrew Martin, it was a tiny little black book called Trends.
I remember those.
It was just had hardly any no notes. And it said, Andrew Martin, by the way, I want to thank you, Andrew Martin. He said he believed that the Berlin Classical was, quote, the best anti-Ruy Lopez method, period. And look at my results as a late starter, beating all these established players, not because I cooked up some special thing, because I found an opening that was sound, and it was hard for a white player to beat it. What were they going to do? And I didn't have to learn it too deep. I just have to learn lines that you hang in there with black. And white would have to overreach himself to try to win. So that's why I say you have to play an opening that's sound, you know, play an opening that's reasonable, that's good, and learn it well and try to make it a little bit offbeat. I'll get to the perked events thing after that, but go on. Did you want me to talk more about the modern opening repertoire, the positional one?
Well, what advice would you give so let's get to the question about an older player. So do you think, I mean, the point you raise about tactics being unavoidable is really important. And true in my opinion. But do you think it's better to sort of steer towards calmer waters as a working dad chess player, or do you think you can't avoid doing the grunt work of working on tactics and playing sharp lines sometimes?
Yeah, and it depends what you want about chess. What you want. Do you just want to win, or do you want to learn to win in style? It's like, I just think you can't avoid a tactical blow up. Now, you don't have to play wild, wide open tactics. But let's face it, you know, I'm not I'm not a guy who would play the French defense. I used to love to beat it. That's just me. Let's say I did only play the King's India defense, and I only played E4 when I was white. So in a way, I look back at all the tournaments I played in Budapest, and by playing the King's India in every game, I put enormous pressure on myself to find perfect moves to get the attack. And then I realized what a target I was, because when you play really good players, they can dismantle the King's Indian, and for every brilliant win you have a lot of bad losses. But so now maybe you've got a point. Look at what world champions have played throughout history, and there's a reason they choose certain openings over others more often. And that's why you can look at, opening choices in that regard. But maybe you're thinking of something like these London systems that everyone's playing now. And I haven't done that, but it's true. It puts people on a familiar ground. They see a pattern of pawn structures they know. And it reminds me of the Stonewall pattern we learned from that book by Reinfeld, How to Think Ahead in Chess. He said, learn the Stonewall pattern with white or black, and this is all you need to know. And so maybe there's something to be said for that, and a lot of people are doing that. So I don't know. You could try that. I haven't tried it. I instead switched to the English and Reti openings in my resurgence as a player, and I reached my peak rating in my 50s using those with white, because, and it's true, I learned what I was doing. I had a plan all the time. It wasn't just to mate my opponent. And that's the beauty of that rep, but you have to do your research on it.
Yeah. So another Patreon supporter question, because this one I think is important to sort of give context for listeners. So Mark Miller has a few questions, but first I want to get to this one, which he says is, at what rating level did you find that opening book knowledge became a significant necessity to success? 1800, 2000, lower, higher?
Well, like I said, on the way up, I learned that opening well. Even I started it at about 1700 when I found that book, or 1800. And I just decided to look at all the games I could find in that particular opening. But it wasn't a type of opening that had a novelty on move whatever, or but it's funny. After I learned the ideas and I kept sharpening it in, once I played Kelleher and I won a game. He's a senior master, very respected. And I beat him, and he told me I made a novelty, that it was an improvement over an Anand game.
Wow.
And I just found it over the board. This is what will happen to you if you love what you choose enough. And you don't give up on it. Love meaning work.
And you're studying, for the most part, when you were studying openings, were you studying complete games?
I had to look in the complete games of the openings, so I got a feel for how they led to, because white would, you're going to end up with double pawns, but you'll have the two bishops.
Right.
In fact, sometimes you'll have two sets of double pawns on the F file and the C file. And you have to get compensation for that in your activity. And then you have to learn to play the opposite side, where you have the structural edge. And so the E4, E5 gave me that classical grounding to branch out. But now, in my resurgence, I hadn't played E5 at all. Anyway, go on.
So it sounds like you were studying openings from the time you were 1800. So below that, as a teacher, getting to Mark's question, with your students that you work with, are you placing much of an emphasis on openings with students, say, below 1600?
Not that much. Like I said, just learn what you want to play well. Look at the games. You don't have to play a dozen different openings, and so it's not, it's not a matter of what opening you choose. Like, I don't know if I agree when somebody said, well, he was a sort of a bookish type, so he shouldn't play sharp openings, because I can tell by looking at you, you should play the Caro-Kann.
Right.
I'm not sure I ever believed that idea, because you've seen lots of mousy, shy guys that love to play tactical stuff over the board, and you wouldn't guess they were hacking attackers.
Yeah, it's true.
I just think you have to try different stuff out and see what you like the looks of. And so I wouldn't say, and by the way, this looking at MCO, read it twice, that's hard to believe. Maybe as a kid, Fisher, right, he understood a lot because he studied diagrams. He was a maniacal worker. I mean, this guy's mother was away. He had no father. He had a lot of inner anger, and he really wanted to beat guys. So he would read all this stuff, and he knew what he was doing. When I looked at, that's when I took that advice at the beginning. I had bats for chess openings. I didn't understand why half these moves were made. What's it good is it going to do memorizing these moves if you don't really understand why the moves are made?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And it's tricky because there's great learning resources, as with tactics trainers, as with openings, stuff like Chessable. So it's easy to just, and of course I love Chessable, but for lower rated players, it's important to really make sure you read the pros and try to understand the ideas and use the engine as a learning tool to ask it questions. And it's nice that more and more the courses have illustrative games, because I do think, especially for working dads and older players, it's going to be hard to remember all the theory anyway. So, and every chess player has had the feeling of something they've drilled, and then they show up at the board and they play it, and you just draw a blank on what you're supposed to do. So it's helpful to actually understand the ideas. But before we move on from the opening topic, because I do want to trace your chronology a bit more and get to your breaks, but Mark has a couple unanswered questions on opening repertoire. So let's dig into those. So these are from Mark Miller, who says, in deciding to change your opening repertoire on returning to chess, how much of the consideration was given as to the need for more positional openings given aging, and how much to the fact that the younger generation is, air quotes, booked up to the teeth? How does 1G6 against both E4 and D4 fit into that answer? And the second question is, has the way in which you prepare openings changed over the years, the tools that you use, etc.?
Okay, good question. Yeah, when I changed entirely, instead of playing E4, switching to knight F3 and C4, I guess what I finally realized is, after my days as a swashbuckling gambiteer, right, with white, I would play the Evans Gambit. And I had a game in ECO in the theory of that. And I was white. I would really love to play with the initiative. And that taught me, like I said, tactics. But now I started realizing that after all this piece play, mating your opponent, looking back and looking at the great players, and now still I think this, one of the real things that separates really good players from the regular ones is how they understand their pawns, their pawn play, the pawn structures, like I said about Dave. Because I remember seeing Djindji-Tchashvili play blitz in Washington Square. And I even was able to play with him a little for fun. The way he would beat guys with his pawns, that's what made the difference. He just knew what he was doing. These pawns would just be like a wave crushing everything in their path. Huh. So I started thinking, wow, and this made chess more interesting to me. So, by the way, Sam Shankland, who is great, he wrote these 2 new books on pawns, and I finished the first one. And it really helps you with that. Heinz Kmach, Pawn Power in Chess.
Oh, man, I'm not a fan. That one is a bit boring, I have to say.
I was just going to say, it's so badly written. There's an algebraic version, but he's got this terminology about the RAM duo and the this and that. You'll never use it again, but it still is useful to look at. Andy Soltis' Pawn Structure Chess really doesn't say as much as Shankland does. And that book about pawn structures by Flores
Rios,
that has some good stuff. But the Shankland books, and just trying to realize how to play these pawn structures, or tabias, that's what sort of led me to it. And so when I looked at Richard Reti, in order to play the Reti, knight F3, I went back. I love going to the old masters. So I got the book Reti's Games. And I looked at his old games and how he blew away all these great players using his system of restraining your center. But the English opening, which hand in hand, also, you end up keeping all your pieces. You slowly build them up, and you have a flank strategy. And so by understanding how you're playing on the queen side, and your king is very safe behind this fianchetto with white, right? So you're not getting the attack on your king as much. And you learn how to attack on the queen side instead of attacking your opponent's king. And why? It's not attacking the king, right? But there's a subtle reason why it's easier to attack the queen side, because the guy doesn't have his king there to help protect it. It's funny. So by changing up and doing this, it is a more strategic nature. So all of a sudden, when I started winning these games, my games were a lot longer, but I always seemed to know what I was doing. Whereas in the king side attack game, I had to attack the king. Okay, I had to get this attack going. Maybe the counterattack would come, whatever. Maybe in the Sicilian defense, I'll win by a great attack, but a lot of times a counterattack will come crush me. So I just like this slower strategic nature. And sometimes you're right. You could get that strategic edge over your opponent.
But it wasn't because you weren't like, oh, I'm getting old, I have to play something boring. It was just that you wanted to learn it.
I'm wondering, maybe it is a little of that, wanting to avoid a long theoretical skirmish in something, because you can play more, you know what the basic move is. You want to try to have positions where you may have more than one move to play, rather than being forced to find the best move. So I'm not sure, but what I'm saying is by playing something different, though, and now I'm playing something different now. And like I said, this year in COVID, I haven't lost a game yet. I only played like 17 tournament games, but I went and played a new opening yet. Now, again, a whole new opening now in my 60s, and I managed to beat a 2,500 player with black in a completely new opening for me. So I don't know. I think you have to stretch yourself. Didn't some player say, a player's getting stronger when he plays new openings? Well, no, but we're still talking about getting a player to find an opening that's going to work for him. Yeah. And I say you got to try something that's a good opening. Maybe this London system is good, not for me. But it's true. I did get upset when I couldn't crack a much lower rated player. I got upset by a much lower rated player at the club. And somebody wrote out an email, look what happened. He lost to this guy. Will he ever show up to the club again? Right?
Oh, boy.
Well, there's one way not to lose chess. Don't play.
Yeah.
It's like you can sit on your rating, whatever. But let's say the guy knew his London system stuff. So that's something to be said for that. But I do beat the system a lot, too. So I'm not afraid of the London system. I just got complacent. And actually, it was more like I had a great position with black and blew it because I played a bad move.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, you're going to have a bad game.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So last thing on Mark's question. So to answer his question about did you change your approach to studying openings? That sounds like a no. I mean, obviously different openings, different books, but you're primarily learning from opening books, it sounds, and experience, right?
Well, let's say this. I found a book, the English Opening by Mihai Marin.
Yeah, you mentioned that in the article, right? 3.
Yeah, and that's 3 volumes. And that first volume, it's beautiful. He writes really well. Well, you have to be a reasonably strong player. I think it's for people to basically 2,000 and up. But you could get something out of it if you're not. I mean, but you could get starting. By the way, you could, in my opinion, if you're going to try the English, I would get Neil MacDonald, anything by him, starting out the Réti, because he really explains things well in his prose. And so something by Neil MacDonald, and then you can go to the Marin books, and he explains the little details about why this move works, the stability of a position, why it makes sense. and therefore I understood what I was doing in that pretty well when I read that book. Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, so lots of good opening advice from Nathan. Of course, it varies a little across the rating spectrum, and I do.
But did I answer the question?
Yeah, I think you. I think you did. I mean, you're pretty clearly you learn from opening. You learn from books more than books and playing more than anything else, and some great book recommendations. And yeah, you also answered his question about what drove your switching.
Right, like look at the player who has a history of the English opening. So you'll look at the games of Howard Staunton to start, the old ones, right? Who played the English? Botvinnik. You look at great players who played the English. Who was it? Tony Miles, right? I'm trying to remember who else. Anyway, you look at your, people who played it really well, whatever opening you're going to choose. And I don't think there's a total shortcut. I just think you have to just love the game and just try something that feels good for you.
Yeah.
But you can't avoid tactics to get to a certain level. So if this person is, so I was saying, he asked if openings are important at certain age. I think they're always somewhat important, but you have to have a basic, like end games, right? Who wants to study them, right? But when I played in the late 80s, Harry Lyman, this dean of New England chess, who was a master, maybe 70 years old, it helped that back then I had adjournments. You remember adjournments?
Oh, yeah. Well, everyone knows them from Queen's Gambit now.
Yeah, you put your move in an envelope?
Yeah.
Well, I had a rook ending against this guy, and it was 2 adjournments.
Wow.
So the game went a total of almost 10 hours. We met. It took 2 weeks to get together 2 weeks later for the final one. And in between, I had rook endings in both of them. And it made me go study the rook endings it gave me that impetus to try and win this game. And that helped me really learn the endings. And it's really sad that people don't have things like that to motivate them. But you have to find a motivation. So that helped. And I won that game. And that was a really big deal for me. Anyway, go
on. So let's get to the break. Let's bring it back to what happened when you finally decided you'd already gotten the master title, but you decided to pursue a career in music.
Okay. Well, I was in Budapest playing some tournaments, and I was always sort of, my wife is Hungarian. I met her there, and it was great to play. I mean, I could go into that story a lot, but I was always a classical guitarist. And somebody, I was singing soul music. I mastered all the gospel of Sam Cooke and all the great soul singers. And I just, people said, why don't you sing? You have a good voice, and I was always a little shy about it. And because you put your heart on your sleeve. And when I tried to sing for friends, they would go, I'll talk. Mm-hmm. So you take that to heart but I got a book of opera arias and I started singing along with it. It was music -1. You would sing, it was like karaoke. And I really started falling in love with this stuff, like Mozart. So I was in Budapest and I was teaching some English part-time. I was teaching a group of kids music also, and also playing tournaments. And I was missing the U.S. a little, but when I went to a conservatory to try and see if I could get started on vocal studies, they said, you're too old, forget it. I was like 40. So I was missing America, so I went back to America. We came back. And there I got into choruses in 2 opera companies in New York. And they gave me small roles. And I took voice lessons. And he said, well, you've got a rare instrument. You're a bass, because low-voiced males are rare. And they need them more in opera. So I just really started practicing just the same way I would practice chess or guitar, which was my background and learning to study. And I just really put in the time as I taught chess on the side in schools. And I just really fell in love with it and worked hard at it. And it was a great feeling to just slowly work my way up. And I remember doing my first role in a small theater in New York and how the butterflies were filling my stomach before I went out and sang an aria in Marriage of Figaro by Mozart in a small part, Dr. Bartolo, for a reasonable part. And so gradually I worked my way up the ladder, and despite, I'm competing in a way, I tried to think of it as a friendly competition. Singers like to compete in the same way.
Right.
As chess players. Only it's not as cutthroat. We're all winners. It's like, but you always want to really get goosebumps, get that feeling. When you hear Pavarotti sing something beautiful, right? You remember that. You hear Ave Maria in a spiritual moment, like after 9/11, Andrea Bocelli or whoever, and you're just crying. You're hearing this. There's nothing as emotional as music. I mean, so be able to sing this heavenly music and just work your way up to doing it and just getting good at it was just such a great feeling. So I just wanted to keep doing it. And gradually I started getting paid more to sing. But I had to really work and keep getting better. And other singers would have doctorates in voice. I was a college dropout, right? But I just said, my mindset is you don't need college. What you need is to really I found private teachers. They cost a lot, but a lot less than going to a school.
Right.
Right. And so I would hone my craft in that and listen to great singers. And so it was a tough road. I mean, people, just like in chess, people would say, you can't do this. You're too old. Pack it in. What are you wasting your time on? But lo and behold, I was 25 years older than my nearest competitors, and I placed a finalist in the New Jersey Opera competition.
Wow.
Right? Out of like 120 singers. So when I did that, I got a big part in something. And then I got hired to sing at Opera North, which is a big festival, in the main stage of Don Giovanni as the father, the commendatore, who sings Don Giovanni. And so after that, then I got into Caramoor, which is one of the elite opera festivals in New York in the summer. And I was in the cast of an opera there, Forza del Destino. And finally, I realized what I was good at, the really intellectual stuff of the speech singing in Italian, that I worked meticulously. And it's the same with studying the Grandmaster's games. You look at these great singers. Some are Italian, some are not. And you study on YouTube, you can find the greatest clips. And you can find guys from the 30s, 40s, and you can work with your score. You translate. You have your music score just like you have your chess book, right? And you translate, you listen to how they do it. You work on the articulation. You have a good coach. And before I knew it, at the opera festival, people were saying, listen to Nathan. He really knows this stuff. I was like, wow, they're saying this, So all the hard work and the lonely hours paid off, right? And so finally, my Carnegie Hall debut.
Yeah,
in
amazing.
front of 2,000 people in 2018. I was bass soloist in Beethoven Mass, and my father was there to see it, and my kids. And my wife's been great behind me. She's a math teacher in a private school in New York. And so it's been great. Then COVID hit, and it's been tough, right? It stopped the opera game, but it's really got me back into the chess game. And I've always been teaching, and luckily I can teach online, and my wife still has a job doing it. But I'm very positive. I think we're going to come back and beat this thing. So I'm just biding my time.
Yeah.
Anyway,
promising signs with the vaccines. So let's get into another Patreon question related to your career in music. This is from a friend of the show, Vyacheslav Nemec, Chess Central's himself. So Vieko asks, he says, there are numerous examples of people being highly accomplished in both chess and music, Mark Taimanov being the prime example, while Smyslov and Tal were also very skilled as a singer and pianist, respectively. Why do you think that is so? Are there any similarities between the two fields, Are there any methods from your background in music that helped you in regard to chess improvement?
Well, Vieco, thanks for the question. I guess I just answered that about music.
Well,
right?
but you answered me, you answered how your chess helped your music, but how did your music help your chess?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's just that feeling of goosebumps you get. Like I said, you sort of get that when you saw like the great games I'll show my students, like Zukertort Blackburn. Where did that move come from? The amazing, beautiful move. And once after a tournament in Budapest, when I finally won a game brilliantly, all the other games were over. So everyone clapped.
Oh, that's
right?
Great.
It's like you got that, but that can only happen when the other games are over. But remember the Queen's Gambit you saw, the clap they did in the Russian tournament, right? But, I like to think that, by the way, that's the first I ever heard that Tal did music.
Yeah.
Tal?
Yeah. It's been written about. Yeah. He was just a savant across the board, it seems like.
Wow. I would have talked to him about it because I got to play Tal at a party.
Oh, wow.
And it was in memory. I'll never forget in New England when he came to give Simons, there were only 4 of us in Mikhail Tal.
Wow.
In 1988 when he had just won the World Blitz. But I would have talked to him about music if I'd only known.
Yeah.
We would have sung a song. But Taimanov. And by the way, I sang with Portish. Well, I sort of helped coached him a little. He asked me to coach him a little on some singing in Budapest. So Portish used to sing on the radio in Hungary, when he was number 3 in the world. But interesting. Well, Philidor,
Yeah, of course.
I mean, opera composer. By the way, there are 2 arias I have. I haven't learned them yet, but I do want to take the time to sing a Philidor aria from an opera by Philidor, who that guy, pawns are the soul of the game, right?
Yeah.
And Piatigorsky was another example, right? The Piatigorsky Cup. He was one of the great cellists.
So what do you think is the connection?
I guess it's the artistic side of chess. I mean, in a way, it's a lot like an art that it takes that kind of discipline and respect for the classics. That's just one side of it, though. I mean, it's hard to say because there are other people who have no gift for music at all that are great chess players. So there are many different sides, and I just think maybe being a musician helped me as a late starter.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it's that discipline that you get from it, and the goosebump theory. If you feel that sort of spiritual joy at a great chess move.
Okay. Well, let's dig into another listener question because we have a few more really good ones. Nathan, you drew out some questions from some esteemed members of the Perpetual Chess community. This one is from I am Kare Christensen, who became an IM in his early 50s. I believe it was the age of 54. So I did a great adult improver interview with him. So I encourage any listeners who did not hear Kare's experience to check that out. And Kare says, he says, I understand Nathan's a strident believer that chess players can achieve big things at any age, which is wonderful. But nonetheless, I'd like to ask him which of the many competencies needed to be a strong chess player is most negatively influenced by age.
Well, that's great about him. When was his first tournament though?
I think he started as a teen, if I recall. He goes through the kind of timeline in our interview. He's had a successful career away from the chessboard. So similar to what you were saying, there have been fits and starts, period where he quits, periods where he comes back. And then at some point he kind of caught a whiff of earning the IM title in his 40s and 50s. And then he was kind of like a dog on a bone with his free time. But I mean, it definitely wasn't a smooth path. But to my knowledge, Kare is not someone who started as an adult and made the master title. Like I said, I'm curious to collect other examples of that if anyone has.
Same thing with Ilya Figler, who got the IM title at 63.
Yeah,
right.
Amazing.
And but he started younger too and came back to it, and I mean, stayed with it, but yeah, what bad qualities stop you? What things stop an older person from doing it? Well, commitments, time, right? Your life, like not having the time. I guess, there's always that saying, you're too old, you're slow, your brain isn't sharp enough, you can't hang in there tactically.
Do you think that's true?
Well, I don't know, because let's take a look at James Tarjan. I know he was already a GM, right? 65. He didn't play chess for 20 years. And he was a 2450 player. And he beats Vladimir Kramnik, a top 5 player. And people look at the game, and I've had these other younger masters say, oh, he was lucky. Kramnik was better. Let me ask you, what excuse do you have? You're playing a 6-hour game, and you're white. No, sorry, you're black. You get a slightly better position, and you lose to a 65-year-old who hadn't played in 20 years. There's no excuse. You got outplayed. Let's face it, what happened was he got reeled in by the smart older guy. And I don't care what you say. I mean, you've got 6 hours. You've got, one game a day. You can't say he got lucky.
Yeah. I mean, then, in chess, you have to be good enough to take advantage of your opportunity. So I definitely think he deserves credit, but I understand what people are saying. Like, it's not the same thing as like earning a title at an advanced stage or like achieving a new rating high, something that shows like a consistency. But so do you think it's true? Do you calculate as well as you ever did? Do you feel?
It depends. It depends how much time you have. If you can work on your calculation again, I think I actually do now. Maybe I'm wrong, but my latest results have borne it out, and I'm 60, but there haven't been that many because I don't play much online. And actually, I'm an old fashioned, like I said. What I believe is in delayed gratification. In other words, you prepare, not necessarily opening line, right? But I prepared my music, and finally I won that competition. I practiced at home a lot. I loved practicing, right? And then so I think I am as good tactically. I just think, what can hurt you? Bad health.
Yeah.
And let's face it, rest. You need a little more when you're older. So how about this? For instance, great chess tournaments in Europe throughout. Classic chess tournaments are 1 game a day, right? And if I ask most players here, they like that better.
Of course, yeah.
Because you get a life. You get to have dinner with someone.
Yeah.
You get to do something. You don't get 2 huge games back to back and barely a time for a protein bar in between, right? So this favors the older player, because what you're doing is your moves are like Boris Gelfand says, if you play too much blitz, the moves don't seem very important.
Right.
Maybe you'll win on time. Maybe you'll come back. Oh, you'll just throw out a move. I think what hurts, the only thing is your rest, your physical robustness, because you've got a lot of good things as an older person. Who do you want to lead an army? An older 5-star general. You don't want some punk kid who's got a quick mind,
right,
but doesn't know stuff yet.
I love it.
There are things you have when you're an old person that should endure respect. In my opinion, my father, 92 years old, I want to listen to what he says. He's got a mind that's really sharp still, because he still does his craft. By the way, my mother passed away in June, and I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just saying she died of advanced dementia. And it was very sad, because when you have dementia, that's probably the worst thing.
Yeah, it is sad.
And lose your mind, because that's your most important thing. And by us working on our chess game, or spending our time working on music and like learning Bach, being able to sing your beautiful fugues or something, I'm hoping that this insures me against that. Of course, as a joke, my wife will say, well, I think you're already getting it, because if you don't cleaning up the house or whatever,
right,
you're forgetting that. But things like this are always going to pay off. That's what we're doing. We love this, but we're also helping our brains. So So now I'm coming around to, I want to choose openings now that are choosing the test of time. Finally, like someone asked, he said about G6 every game, right?
Right, yeah.
He said G6 and right, I should answer that.
Yeah, that was Mark Miller's question, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I played the King's Indian every game, and then I played the Perk and Modern. It's like you said, I got a win in an IM tournament over Nakamura back in Budapest, right? And
yeah, amazing. Young Nakamura, yeah.
Yeah, and I beat Nakamura like he was 13, but he was still outrated me.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like he was a tiny kid. And even on streaming 2 months ago, he said on his stream, he said, "Oh, I lost to Nathan Resica in this, and I'll never forgive him."
That's great.
And he had said that to me online. He'll never forget. And I thought that was a joke, but he keeps repeating it. So maybe we'll start a little trash talk about a rematch one day.
All right, yeah.
It's right here, man. And, so I'm trying to make some money one day. But anyway,
yeah.
So anyway, let's say G6 right? But the reason I learned it is because I didn't play the Perk defense, right? But he's talking about G6, Perk Modern, which became my rep. Why did I play that? Here's why. I got to Budapest and I got a teacher there, Alexander Chernin. And he said, "I teach Perk defense. If you want to study with me, you have to play that." So it was I was forced to play it, okay? And now, so G6 you're right. What you're doing by learning G6 is you're avoiding the most popular openings, right? So in answer to that, so you're doing that. But now I look at it. I did play G6, right? And I knew it better than other people. But now people are finding out more. They're finding out how much of an advantage space is for white, like with Alpha Zero and all this. So when you start looking at the Perk defense as a repertoire for a player, okay, why do you look at some books on the Perk and the main line is a blitz game by Kramnik?
Right, yeah.
If it's a blitz game, it means Kramnik doesn't trust it as a solid basis. So you're ceding a lot of space, and you have to be really good at defense because you're going to endure a crushing attack on you in some of these lines of the Austrian attack. And I learned to do it because I learned to love it because I chose it and I got good at it and I had time to work on it. And Chernin gave me defensive combinations by Dvoretsky to learn how to get yourself out of like crazy situations. But do you want to get this awful pawn structure where you're always defending? So now as an older player, I'm picking openings that I've never did in my life, but they're giving me an understanding of chess I didn't think I had. So I'm choosing more standard stuff, and I'll say what I chose with black. And when I beat that really strong player, the Queen's Gambit declined.
Oh, wow. Classic. Yeah.
And I never played it before, but I'm starting to realize that there's a reason why they're choosing to play this in most Grandmaster games.
Yeah, Hikaru is playing it practically every black game now against D4.
Yeah. And it's true. You get in positions where you have more than one choice of understanding what to play. Whereas with the King's Indian, you better find that good move. And it's really fun. But it's not fun when you're getting crushed for space.
Yeah.
So there's that. And with black, the Sicilian defense. And for people that are going to choose the Caro-Kann, here's a joke. The Caro-Cant is a Sicilian. Obviously, black meant to play C5, but he was hungover from a party the night before and by accident played C6. Now, okay, don't be insulted, Caro-Kann players, but
yeah,
let's face it. By playing the Sicilian, you're going to have a half-open game, right? You've got all the tactics of an open game, but you've also got all the strategy of a closed game. So you get that blend. And so that's why I think the Sicilian defense is your best choice. But this is just me now, what I'm doing. But okay, but the question was the detriment. It's only your health and your whatever. You got advantages in your knowledge and your knowledge.
Yeah,
as an
experience.
person.
Yeah. So, but let me tackle it this way, Nathan, because for all your success,
as someone who plays a lot of tournaments, when you're active, your rating, of course, has bounced around. So I know after you made your rating high, as I alluded to, I think it was 53 thereabouts in the mid 2300s, you went all the way down to a 2200 floor, which again, a lot of us can relate to. But if you try to pinpoint what was going wrong there, what do you think it was?
I'm glad you asked that. And as you know, when I played that Budapest once in my 30s, and I lost every game in a tournament, 0-10.
Wow.
And with 2 draws, day after day, 1 game a day with your flag next to your board. Every single game, a devastating loss. And, and then coming back 6 months later and winning that tournament.
Wow.
Right. I wrote that article in US Chess. Okay, maybe me, I'm a little more, but here's what happened. First of all, let me give credit to my opponents for beating me and taking me down in that thing in my 50s. But let's say this. I was working on my game when I could. After that surge in that great year, I did a lot more opera and I did a lot less focusing on chess. So I didn't really study it much. And I went to the tournaments and I would slowly trickle away the rating points. And let's look at it this way. Didn't one of your players, Peter Janatos, said this? He said that in the US, you've got a lot of players now who are talented juniors with 2,200 USCF and 1,700 FIDE.
Right.
So it's a very hard place to gain FIDE points. So not only did I drop to my floor US, and I dropped to 2140 FIDE, so like 200 plus FIDE points gone, 200 US. But I realized why, besides my opponents playing well, that I wasn't putting as much into it. So I was letting it slowly slide. And I was playing 1 night a week at the Marshall, and that would happen, or 2 nights. And it just happened. And then I realized, then COVID hit and I'm just starting to work on it again. And lo and behold, climbing back up. I'm not totally there yet, but even then, in between that, I had some good results. And I guess you have to say rating isn't everything. You just have to look at the quality of your games.
Yeah. Well, I can relate because that's how I lost all my rating points, living in New York, working, chess wasn't my profession at the time, and I would just show up and play once in a while. And I felt like it was like riding a bike, and it's not like riding a bike. And especially if you're playing those faster time controls, you get what you deserve. So yeah, that's something that when COVID's over, I'm finally thinking about trying to dig myself out of. But like I said, you have to roll with the punches in this game. And there's only one way to avoid losing points. Don't play.
Yeah.
So I know players that don't play and they've sat on their rating for sometimes 20 years because it gets they think it'll make them more students. But whatever it is, I'm a player that's more up and down. I don't usually coast around one area.
And do you get down? Like if you're in a slump and you've lost a bunch of rating points, how much does it bother you?
I guess not too much. Otherwise, I would never play again, right? But like I said, I did do that quick cold turkey and chess is a waste of time thing. But I'm just growing to love the vicissitudes. And as I said, maybe the change in the openings helps me too. But like I said, I didn't look at chess much, but I did play for a long time too. And now I'm coming back to looking at it more. And like I said, I don't do on the online thing. I just like to read books without a set. I like to do that sort of more Gelfand type method or Petrosian type method of study. So I like the delayed gratification of not playing and then getting this big desire to play.
Yeah.
So when I went to Texas and played the Southwest Open and didn't lose a game, I had a real desire to play and sit across the board. We had masks. Of course, it was a tournament with masks. And it was interesting to play this way. And I got to say, if you're playing a tournament with masks, it can affect your vision a little. If it rolls up your eye a little, So it is a little bit annoying. So get really good at blindfold chess.
Yeah. And
Okay,
that's funny. And if you wear glasses, you might have to worry about them fogging up, although usually that's not as bad indoors. So Nathan, it's amazing you went to this tournament in the middle of a pandemic. You feel the love of chess to do that. But of course I have to ask, how did your wife respond when you told her you were interested in making this trip to Texas to play OTB?
Man, you are a good host. You've done this a while, haven't you? Yeah, I'm saying you know what to ask. Yeah, well, no, because basically I've been in discussion with doctor friends of mine. We get all this different stuff on the media, right? So I talked to doctors about whatever risk. And I learned about vitamin D a long time ago. And like keeping your immune system strong can stop you from getting viruses in the first place, because you might not even pick it up because your immune system's strong. Now, I'm not minimizing, I'm just saying, so we all have to take our own risks. I mean, here I am turning 60, right? And I roomed with my good friend who's an FM who's 70. And we roomed in a room without a window. So it's like, that's the way those hotels are, but they weren't considering pandemics, right? And Texas supposedly wasn't doing as well, but still, it was on the upswing. And I checked with the flights, like Delta was keeping people spaced so no one's next to you. And the odds are no one's even in your row because no one's traveling. Not many people are traveling. So no one was in my row. I wore a good secure mask. And the flight was very pleasant. The airport, because not many people were traveling. It's September. But still, in the middle of the pandemic, but things were looking better. And I really wanted to play and try out new stuff, and missed real competition. And so my wife she wasn't too aghast about it, but she said I had to follow the New York law and do a 14-day quarantine when I come back. I'm not in the city. I live outside the city in Valhalla, beautiful suburb, low profile. It's actually the cemetery capital of New York. There are more dead people than alive here.
That's funny. Wow.
And so she wasn't that vehement because, everyone's around each other all the time. So it is really good to get away a little bit. You know what I mean? It gets a little, crowded. Everyone's at home every minute.
Right.
So it wasn't that bad. She just wanted me to be careful and get tested the minute I got back.
Yeah. So you did do that.
I never got tested before.
Yeah.
So you always take that chance. If you get tested, what if you're positive? Like I have friends who were positive but never had symptoms, but they found out they were positive. They never even sick.
Yeah.
So in a way, the more you test, the more you're going to find positives, So
yeah.
So do you want me to tell about the tournament a little?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So it was very well run. And the pool was hot, Texas sun. And so I was out there as much as I could because, in viruses throughout history, the best thing to avoid that is outdoors and heat, So, and there were a lot of talented juniors, as usual. It meant I had to wade through a bunch of sharks with like tiny FIDE ratings and reasonable US ratings, right?
Yeah, brutal.
So you got 1,700 FIDEs and 2,000 US, and it's FIDE rated.
Yeah.
So I just had to know, the thing about your rating, right? Like you said, I hit my rating floor, whatever. Think about it. Chess totally depends on, you can't control your rating because your opponent has something to say about it, right? So that's the problem with gauging your rating going up, because how hard are your opponents working, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So I managed to get through the juniors in really good, tough games, like trying out my Sicilian defense, which I'm still sort of new, well, not totally new, but I'm playing different variations of the Sicilian. I'm getting to know, like first it was the Accelerated Dragon, right? Known as the Black Death, because everyone played it because of the Gingy book.
Yeah.
What was that book?
The Hyper-Accelerated.
Accelerated, right? So got my ropes in that. I tried the classical, doing others. And lo and behold, I get hold with some offbeat Sicilians that go out of the modern, like Bishop B5 check or D3, so you still have to deal with all that. So I managed to get in tough games my young 1900 opponent, Praga Vanamanabagadan, or his name was longer than Anand. He was like 6 foot and like 14 years old or 15. A tough game. Well, his rating was 1950. I mean, I'm trying to talk my opponent up, but let's face it, they're tough. So it was a good game. Then I drew an Indian kid who was 2050 and tough game. And then beat a Ukrainian young guy, 6'4". It doesn't matter how tall they are, but these young guys, I'm telling you, these A players gave me more fight than some 2100s who were like playing their whole life in New York.
Yeah.
And then finally I got to the 2500. I'm not going to give names away because I don't want to drag anyone's name through the mud. And I knew it'd be play the number one player, and I was black. And the work, like I said, I don't test out my new openings in Bliss anymore. I follow Botvinnik's dictum. I learn it well, and I don't need blitz games to get to know my opening if I know it well. If you study and you remember, you look at your position. If you don't remember your position well, study it again. Read the book twice. You have to feel confident that you understand what you're going to play before you play it. Not always. At my level, I want to.
Yeah.
When you're learning, So I managed to win a really long game and really, of course, he couldn't have played perfectly if I won with black, but it was a long game. And after the game, when I won a most significant tournament win I had in years, after a long layoff in COVID against a player half my age with black, he said to me, "Good game." And this guy was class act. I find strong players are a class act. You behave well in defeat, and people will remember that.
Yeah. Well, in that case, maybe you should say his name. I don't think he would be embarrassed. I mean, certainly I know you've got some GM scalps over the years, so he's in good company.
I don't know. Okay, Zurab Javakadze. Thank you, Zurab, for being such a great sport. And then after that, I almost blew it against a former master, it said national 2100, but managed to hold against an offbeat Sicilian. And I had a game with Justin Sarkar, who won the tournament, who's got 5 GM norms. That game ended in a draw. And then in the last game, I played a very sharp Sicilian with black and also a draw and got $500 and a tie for third. Clear third on tie breaks if you look at tie breaks with an overall 2360 performance in a 7-round tournament. And so that was my story as, a battling senior.
Amazing.
And it just gives me more to work forward to and just try to understand even better,
Yeah. So are you planning any other tournaments?
Yeah, I wanted to play the Spice Cup, which was funny because they had this online Game 30 U.S. Championship, right? And let's face it, if you're a strong GM and they offer you so much money, you would even call it a U.S. Championship at Game 10 if you're offered the payday. But let's face it, come on. It's not a real championship at Game 30. Hats off to the players. They're great players.
Yeah, and it was great, as you say, it's great that Rex Singfeld, made that possible in the St. Louis Chess Club just because people are depending on it for their livelihood. But,
I totally agree. But right next door, down the street, no one was talking about the Spice Cup, which has 15 GMs in it, and it was a legitimate over-the-board tournament right there in St. Louis, 9 rounds. And Sarkar was playing, and I wanted to go to that. But they had some weird rules, like they said you have to be tested randomly or before the round. And if someone you played tested positive, you could be quarantined. You could not be allowed to play. And I was thinking that was one drawback. And another drawback is it was a lot more expensive and I couldn't find a roommate.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go to that. I didn't. And there's nothing else coming. So I'm waiting to see what's going to come and really hoping, that we kick this thing soon, or just because the Texas thing was a great success. No one got sick and we traveled there. So it was a success for me. So I'm just saying that, certain people will take their chances and maybe sign a waiver and, certain people should be quarantined, but, I think we're going to have more. It's just a matter of when. They're having one in Texas coming up next week. I know a good master friend who's playing.
Wow.
Same group.
And let me ask you, Nathan. So you, in the U.S. Chess article that we've referenced a few times, and again, I'll link to it. It's really well written and inspiring. You sort of allude to having more goals. So do you have like unfinished business? I mean, obviously the next title beyond FM is IM, which is a high hurdle to clear. Do you dream about that, or are you focused on the World Senior and the U.S. Senior? What are your chess goals, if any?
Ben, why Why think small? No, I'm kidding. Let's just say,
watch your back, Alpha Zero.
Yeah. Love it, man. Let's talk some trash. No, but you take your lumps in this game. You got to be able to take it. I told you about losing a lot and how you build yourself from it. People are going to say things. I'll never forget when it was this master when I was an expert, and he said, "You're not going to make it." He said, and then he came up to me once and said, 7 straight. And I said, "What do you mean?" "You just lost 7 straight games. I've been keeping track."
Wow.
Ooh, man. And so, there are people who talk trash. And, I was playing up. I was playing strong players. And I said, "Oh, okay, thanks for telling me." But once I made master, this guy was the first to put signs up in the club and say, "Congratulations." But, let's say I'm not going to tell my goals because talk is cheap.
Okay. But actually,
yeah.
Well, you mentioned playing up, and that reminded me again in the interview with Fred Wilson, which is available for Patreon subscribers. You mentioned that you always played up when you were coming up, and by play up, I mean like there'd be like an under 1600 section you'd play in the under 1800 section. Under 1800 section, if you're under 1800, you play in under 2000, and that's something that, especially now with everyone learning online, I think it's important for people to know when they do venture out into a real tournament, how important that can be.
Well, here's the danger of that. Now, let me specify. It wasn't quite true. I did, but not in the big money events.
Okay.
If you're playing a bigger event, you should play in your class to show you can dominate, to give you that confidence to move on. Because if you play up, you can get a sort of, it's okay to get a draw with these guys mentality. You know what I mean? Like, you want to try and dominate your section. If you can't, hey, then you've got more to lose when you don't play up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Maybe you're not, but I played up when I liked playing, in smaller events that were for hardly anything, like which we had more of. I would play in the section above my rating. Yeah. But when it came time to a bigger event that I paid a high entry fee for, I would try to win my section, and that paid off pretty well. And if you play open sections, usually you're going to get paired up to masters or people like that. I remember one early tournament, I was about 1600, and there were a couple masters at the Boylston Club in Boston, and they played each other and drew, and I beat some other guy. And then the director asked me, "The 2 masters want to play each other again. Would you mind if you didn't play them and played someone lower?" Because I was going to get paired with one of them.
Right.
And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" They were trying to fiddle with the Swiss system because he didn't want to play a 1600.
Right.
I said, "No way, I'm playing these guys."
Yeah, good for you.
So, well, I'm sure most people want to. And I actually almost won the game, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And my master opponent said, "You got to know what you're doing." It's like, okay.
Duh.
I got tons of anecdotes.
All right. So Nathan, we have one more listener question that we haven't gotten to. This one is from champion of the people who has helped me out with a couple book recap podcasts, Neil Bruce. Neil actually he's in the Massachusetts area. I know you're no longer there, but probably knows a lot of the people that you've referenced. So Neil says, for an adult improver with a job, family, etc., what are the maximum and minimum number of hours of chess study per week that you recommend?
Well, if you're asking maximum, I don't think you really mean to ask that, because obviously, if you have a family job, what are the maximum I'm allowed to study?
Yeah.
Or whatever your wife and kids might allow you to study. More is always better. But like I said, if you want, I would say minimum, if you can get a little in every day, even a half hour would be better than like missing 2 days and doing 2 hours, of solving something, solving a couple, puzzles. And I could recommend, authors. If English is your language, you should try to seek out fluent English speaking good writers and speakers like Sam Shankland.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even at my level, he came out with a thing. I mean, at the lower level, he's got a method, right? He's got a method. And I find he has a sense of humor. He's not too arrogant. And I did the 2700 skill set. And I did that before the tournament I went to. And he tells you, stop the video. What would you do here? And I find if you're doing something where you can understand it, I would solve 80% after some work,
Wow.
but maybe 20% I wouldn't. And that's the best way to learn. You don't want to have something where you couldn't possibly solve anything, no matter how hard you work. Yeah. So you also go with Neil MacDonald, Daniel King, Andrew Martin, John Nunn. These are the names that I mentioned. Fluent English guys who like to explain a lot. And the Starting Out series is a good book. Now, I don't know about Chess Able. I hear this is great. I want to try it sometime. Anyway, go on. So yeah, as much as you can, and try to get a little bit regular, minimum half hour.
Okay.
But try to get
well, Neil's pretty active on chess Twitter. And he's got a legendary work ethic. So he's no worries about the half hour for Neil. And he makes a lot of flashcards and stuff and pretty well versed. But yeah, but it's fair to say that when you were working the hardest, it was just every spare moment, it sounds like.
Yeah, when you could find the time.
Yeah.
When you could find the time. And you try to force yourself to visualize with a book ahead, rather than play out the moves. That's Petrosian's advice. That's this. Like we said, now there's computers to do everything. And also, if you use an engine, it makes you really lazy. I'll look at stuff. I'll try to solve it. And if I can't, I'll check the engine. But if you leave the engine on continuously, I don't think you're going to get much learning in.
Yeah. So what's your approach to analyzing your games, Nathan? Speaking of engines.
I don't do it enough. Like I said, my dad's thing was the more great masters you look at.
That's interesting.
Solve, it beats 100 of your own. But there's no doubt. I mean, more and more strong players always say that's the key.
Yeah.
And I do, if I have a particular thing where I don't understand why I lost, of course. You have to figure that out.
You might be the first master level player who's been on here, Nathan, who has admitted that game analysis isn't like a big pillar of your study regimen. And I'm sure you're not the first one for whom that's the case, but I have actually, I think your friend, I think Vigorito said something similar. I mean, you do analyze your games, but both of you guys play a lot, or at least like at times played a ton of tournaments, not just like messing around online, like you say.
Right, but you have to care enough to know to learn what you went wrong. Like if all you're doing is playing Bullet or Blitz, you may go, "Oh, I'll just keep playing," and not really care to find out what went wrong and what you're not understanding. And you might humble yourself continually and try to think, maybe I don't know much as I thought, about this. That's a good attitude.
Yeah, I mean, and some losses just leave a mark, and so it might not be you're going over every game for hours in a fine-tooth comb, but if you have one of these games where you just don't even know where you went wrong and you just got outplayed, I'm imagining you're going to take a look at it, especially like what you can learn from the opening and stuff like that.
Right. Like let's say you miss a tactic and you lose, maybe also, and you do it repeatedly in the same opening, maybe there's something about that opening that's uncomfortable. Maybe there's something about that position you don't understand in general. So that's why you got to learn to love the tabia of the middle games, opening middle games of what you want to do after you have a basic of understanding of the end game and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Nathan, it's been an awesome long interview. Dare I ask that just in closing, before we let you go, if we were to try to sort of bullet point what contributed most to your success? I could try, you could try. What do you think?
Don't get discouraged.
Okay.
Have solace in beauty of, well, I always have music, like Taimanov said, at least I always have my music when he lost 6-0 to Fischer.
Right.
But it was different. He was under the thumb of a communist regime, so he had a lot of problems after he lost to Fischer. But let me just look here what I can just say.
Study structures, I would say, based on what you've said. You're not just trying to memorize openings, but study the whole game and learn the common motifs.
Yeah, learn, and definitely don't sell short your tactics, because if you say, don't do this because juniors are going to be better tactically, I don't know. I mean, every game is won in the end by a checkmate.
Yeah.
But it's true. If you get a positional thing and you queen your pawn, you know, you resign because you have a queen. But, you know, just take a licking and, you know,
get back after it.
I like high art. Read good books. Read great authors. Do things that make you think. Try to question your core beliefs about anything sometimes, you know, and just you read biographies of great players you admire or great whatever artists you admire. Read about their lives when they're older, you know.
Okay. Well, excellent. And I know, Nathan, you've got a website for your music. I don't know if your Facebook profile is public. Is it okay if I share your email address with listeners? I know you do.
Oh, please do. You know, I coach chess on a limited basis, as I said, and someone may want to study with me, you know. Okay.
And last thing before we go, we did discuss maybe you singing a tiny bit before we call it a podcast, since you're overqualified to do so. All right, here we go.
Here you go.
He's getting ready. He's got music.
Giorno faticar per chi nulla sa gradir, piova e vento sopportar, mangiar male, mal dormir. Voglio fare il gentiluomo e non voglio più servir.
Yes, that was excellent. Thank you, Nathan. Be safe and good luck in your next tournament whenever it may be.
Oh, che caro galantuomo.
Special thanks, as always, to my producer, Matthew Passy, and thanks to those who help continue to spread the word about Perpetual Chess, whether it's via a positive review on a podcast platform, or telling a friend, or however you choose to do it. You can also engage with the Perpetual Chess community. You can follow me on Twitter, I'm at BennyFisher1, or join the Perpetual Facebook group and continue the conversation about the latest interview. For now, the Perpetual Chess Instagram page has gone back into retirement, but someday we will break the blockade and start marching up the board again. Last but not least, you can also email me through the podcast website or directly at ben@perpetualchesspod.com. But more than anything, I would like to express my gratitude to those who provide financial support to Perpetual Chess. Most of all, I want to thank Chessable for sponsoring the show, and to everyone who kicks in via PayPal or the Perpetual Chess Patreon page to support this community endeavor and allow me to sustain and continue to improve the show. So without further ado, I would like to give special thanks to the following people and entities. They are Chessable.com, Quality Chess Books, the Capital City Chess Club, the Abysmal Depths of Chess blog, Adapta Interactive Web Designs and Services, Apprentice Twitch channel, Andrew Alharji, Andrew Bach, Andy Ryerson, Aniti Deer, Austin Clough, Benjamin Porteau, Bill Sigler, Kathy Carr, Chad Oliver, the Charlotte Chess Center, the Chess Central's Chess Blog, Chessmood.com, Chris Flanagan, Dan O'Hanlon, Daniel He, Danny Davidson, David Schreiber, Derek Jones, I am Dimitri Schneider, Drake Domingue, I am Eric Rosen, Eric Tam, Ewan Richardson, Faraz Sawaf, Gary Foreman, Glenn Downing, Greg Harfst, I am Greg Shahadi, Gregory Galuk, Guven Manet, James Kennedy, Jen Scream, Jeremy Nielsen, John Jernigan, John Rockefeller, John Cromartie, John MacArthur, Kelly Palmer, Kevin O'Callahan, King Selt, Lucio Casada Silva, the law offices of Stuart Katz, LeelaAnalysis.com for cloud-based Leela engine analysis, Michael Can, FM Michael Oblin, Mike Zalazmi, Mr. Mike Shahadi, the famous Mr. Dodgy, the Nerdinays Twitch channel, Peter Sodi, Play More Chess Academy of the Hamden Chess Club, Reuven Fisher, Robert Karcher, the Seattle Chess Club, Shane Unger, Stephen Kelty, Stephen Martinez, Thomas Stanix, Thomas Tachenko, Todd Bryant of StrongChess.com, Todd Kennedy, the Vintage Patzers, which is a Chess.com improver group, Wayne Beam, William Hogarth, and I would also like to thank Aaron Waffler, Ace Vallega, Adam Ralph of ChessEngland.com, Adrian Gutierrez, Alex Pejas, FM Andre Terakov, Dr. Andrew Perry, Barry Hessian, Bill Juniper, Bill Moran, Brad and Andy Rosen, Brett Howard Lynn, Brian Mullis, Brian Tillis, Bruce Scott, Chad Hilton, Dr. Charles Snodgrass, Chris Wainscott, Christopher Baumgartner, Christopher Chabris, Chris Lott, Christopher Wood, I am Christoph Zalecki, aka Chess Explained, Coach J's Chess Academy, Costa Carras, Courtney Fry, Craig Mallon, Daniel Ginsberg, Daniel Naylor, Dave Saylor, David Bleskacek, David Hamblin, David Cramley of Chessable, David Lazarus of LazmanChess.com, Dalen Shelton, Dennis Parrish, Dirk Decker, FM Donnie Ariel, not I Am Elect, Drake Domingue, Dwayne Edmonds, Ed Daly, Ethan Smith, Hallelujah Cat, Ian Mason, Indrik Ryland, Fide Arbeiter, Felipe Melo Pereira, Fox Valley Chess Club, Francis Letarte Lavoie, Dr. Frank Tortoris, Frank Zananis, Gary Andrews, Gary Lewis, Geert Vanderveld, Gene Stewart, Gerard Barter, Giovanni Russo, Hans Schut, Harash Srinivasan, Jacob Kovac, Jacob Turan, Jacques Pari, James Aspinwall, James Bonastia, James Moore, Jason Woolham, Jaydeep Chakrabarty, Jeff Anderson, Jeffrey Martello, Yep Hoyland, Jerry Wells, Jim Ratliff, JJ Stranad, Juan Almagor, Dr. John Fallon, John Fernandez, John Fontaine, John Hartman, John Jeffrey, John McMurtry, Jonathan Slater, Jose Rodriguez, Justin Gardner, Jen Shahadi, Joel Rocky, John Thompson, GM Josh Friedel, I am Kare Christensen, WGM Katerina Nemtsova, Kelly Palmer, Kevin Pryor, Kior Gata of the Lakeshore Chess Club, I am Kostya Kovutsky, Krishna Gopala Krishnan, Kyle McAvoy, Larry Ryforth, Laura Boyovsky, Macaulay Peterson, Martin Knudsen, Martin Krug, Matthew Passy, Matthew Tedesco, the Mechanics Institute Chess Club of San Francisco, Michael Allard, Michael Hudson, Miguel Aristide, Mike Clem, Mitchell Fabian, Nate Solon, Neil Bruce, Negmat Mulajanov, Nicholas Isabel, Olaf Mueller-Michaels, GM Pascal Charbonneau, Passy Passanen, Paul Bain, Paul Clarkson, Paul Sweeney, Paulo Santana, Peter Lux, Randy Temple, Ricky Grijalva, Richard Hollenbach, Robert Tichy, Robert Turner, Roy Yearwood, Ryan Berg, the Say Chess YouTube channel, Scott Doherty, Scott McKinnon, Sebastian Finsterwalder, Shane Unger, Stefan Roller, Sven Retyik, WGM Tatya Abrahamian, Tim Brennan of TacticsTime.com, Tim Seymour, Timothy Ha, Tom Edsel, Tomas Komanich, Tony Rotella, Tyron Price, Vishnu Srikumar, William Brock, William Juniper, William Peterson, FM Zhao Cheng of Chess1000.com, and Zhivko Stoyanov. Thanks for listening, everyone. I will catch you guys next week.